From hand-stitching leather boots to literally collecting dog poop off the streets for money, this is how 15 factory jobs from the 1800s died and why some of them genuinely need to make a comeback. And spoiler alert, while some of these jobs were absolutely disgusting and should stay dead forever, others were basically art that we gave up for cheap garbage from Amazon. We're talking craftsmen who spent a decade learning skills that machines now do in seconds, workers who created products that lasted generations instead of breaking after a year, and yes, people whose entire job was wading into ponds and letting leeches attach to their legs. But before we get to the weird stuff, let's start with the jobs that would make modern OSHA inspectors have a complete meltdown just reading about them. Imagine going to work knowing there's a decent chance you won't make it home. That was reality for rat catchers in 1800 factories. These dudes would wade into textile mills and warehouses grabbing disease-carrying rodents with their bare hands. No gloves, no traps, just angry rats that carried typhus, plague, and infections that could kill you in days. The pay? A few pennies per rat. Factory owners needed population control 'cause rats chewed through everything. So they hired the poorest men they could find and sent them on suicide missions. Match girls had it worse. Young women dipping wooden sticks into white phosphorus for 12 to 16 hours a day. The phosphorus caused phossy jaw, where your jawbone would literally glow in the dark and then rot from the inside out. Your teeth would fall out. Your jaw would disintegrate. Many died before age 25. The factories knew it was deadly. They just didn't care 'cause labor was cheap and replaceable. Then there were chimney sweeps, kids as young as 4 or 5 climbing narrow chimneys, scraping soot while inhaling toxic fumes in suffocating darkness. Many got stuck and died. Survivors developed testicular cancer from the carcinogenic soot. Most were orphans or sold by their families. They worked without safety equipment, no days off, no compensation if they got hurt. And people wonder why unions formed. But if you thought those jobs were dangerous, these next ones required skills so precise that one mistake could kill everyone in the building. Working with gunpowder wasn't just dangerous, it was a constant game of one wrong move and everyone dies. Powder monkeys handled explosive black powder in munitions factories, transporting hundreds of pounds daily. One spark, one dropped barrel, one bit of static electricity could turn you into a cloud of red mist. You needed nerves of steel and insane precision, no running, no metal tools, no wool clothing. Many were young boys, chosen because they were small, quick, and expendable. Factory explosions barely made newspapers unless the death toll was really high. Glass blowers worked next to 1800-degree furnaces, breathing toxic fumes all day. They'd blow molten glass while spinning it with bare hands using wet wooden tools that sizzled. Workers would lose 10 to 15 pounds per shift from sweating. Silicosis killed most by age 40. But the work they created? Absolutely stunning. Intricate designs, custom glassware, scientific instruments, art-level stuff. Master glass blowers trained 7 to 10 years under apprenticeships. Their work is sitting in museums right now. Die mixers worked with arsenic, lead, mercury, and chromium. They'd mix vats of chemicals with their hands and arms, breathing fumes in poorly ventilated rooms. The chemicals absorbed through their skin, slowly poisoning them. But these weren't just workers. They were chemists holding secret formulas passed down through generations. A master dye mixer could recreate any color by eye using dozens of chemical ratios. Factory owners paid them well, 'cause if you lost your master dye mixer, you lost your competitive edge. These weren't just factory jobs. They were skilled trades requiring a decade of training and a willingness to sacrifice your health. And the workers who survived? They had status. People respected their expertise. So, yeah, those jobs required insane skill, but some 1800s factory jobs were just straight up weird. And I mean weird. Imagine walking into a job interview and they ask how you feel about letting leeches attach to your legs for 8 hours. This was a real job. Leech collectors would wade into ponds and marshes and just stand there while dozens of leeches latched onto their bare skin. Once full, they'd peel them off and toss them in a bucket. All day. The pay was terrible. Maybe a few pennies per leech, and infections from leech bites were common. But at least leeches were used for something. Toad doctors had an even weirder job. In rural England, there was this belief that toads had magical healing properties. So toad doctors would collect toads from fields, then sell them whole or extract toad venom to sell as, quote, one spoiler toad venom doesn't cure anything. It just makes you sick. But demand was steady, so these guys would hunt hundreds of toads daily. The venom extraction burned your skin if you weren't careful. And the smell? Absolutely rancid. Charming. But you know what's even better? Collecting dog poop. Pure finders had possibly the most unfortunate job title in history. They'd walk streets with a bucket and scraper, collecting dog feces from sidewalks and alleys. Why? Because leather tanneries needed it. The enzymes in dog poop were perfect for softening leather. Pure finders worked in all weather, scraping fresh and old waste. The smell was so bad that other workers would cross the street to avoid them. And the pay? Barely enough to survive. But here's the wild part. They were essential to the leather industry. Someone's great-great-grandfather put, quote, 2 on their resume, and it was a legitimate trade. These jobs existed because pre-modern medicine and pre-synthetic chemistry meant people needed natural materials for everything. When modern medicine proved bloodletting didn't work, and synthetic chemicals replaced natural sources, these jobs vanished overnight. Honestly, good riddance on these ones. But the next batch? These were jobs people were actually proud to have. And honestly, they should come back. Now we're getting to the jobs that actually hurt to lose. Hand compositors set every letter of books and newspapers by hand. They'd stand at a compositor's case, picking out metal letters one by one, arranging them backwards so they'd print correctly. This required perfect literacy and insane focus. A skilled compositor could set 1,500 characters per hour. That's one letter every 2 seconds for hours. The really good ones did it without looking. Pure muscle memory. But here's why this job mattered. Hand compositors were literate in an era when most working-class people couldn't read. This gave poor kids access to knowledge trades. Apprentices learned to read while learning typesetting. That literacy gave them social mobility. A good compositor earned decent wages and had job security. In their communities, they were respected as educated craftsmen. The job died in the late 1800s when the linotype machine automated typesetting. One operator could do the work of 6 compositors. A 400-year-old trade vanished in a generation. Barrel coopers were basically the engineers of the pre-industrial world. Barrels held everything: wine, whiskey, oil, gunpowder, flour. Making a barrel that doesn't leak requires mathematical precision. A cooper had to cut staves to exact curves, assemble them without nails or glue, and bind them with metal hoops tight enough for the barrel to be watertight. The geometry is insane. One miscalculation and the whole barrel leaks. Master coopers trained 7 to 10 years. Their work lasted generations. A well-made barrel could be used for 100 years or more. Some whiskey distilleries today still use barrels made in the 1800s. In their communities, a good cooper was respected like a doctor. But when steel drums and cardboard boxes replaced wooden barrels in the early 1900s, coopering nearly died. Textile menders repaired fabric so perfectly you couldn't see the fix. They'd reweave missing threads one by one, matching exact patterns and tension. A master mender's work was invisible under magnification. Their skill meant garments lasted decades instead of being thrown away. When fast fashion made clothing disposable, mending became obsolete. Why repair a shirt when you can buy a new one for less? This is what we gave up for speed. And if you think those jobs sound impressive, the next ones were basically art, like museum-level craftsmanship. Every single day. Hand bookbinders created products meant to last forever. Before mass production, every book was bound individually. These weren't workers slapping covers on pages. They were artists. The process was insane. They'd fold and sew printed pages together by hand, creating signatures. Each had to be sewn with perfect tension so the book would open smoothly. Then they'd attach the text block to wooden boards covered in leather. The leather would be hand-tooled with intricate designs using heated metal stamps and gold leaf. A master bookbinder would spend hours creating decorative patterns, family crests, or elaborate borders unique to each book. And the gold leaf application? That required microscope-level precision. One wrong move and you'd tear the gold or smudge the design. The finished product was an heirloom families treasured for generations. Many hand-bound books from the 1800s are in museums, still perfectly intact after 200 years. Today, books are mass-produced and fall apart after a few reads. Ceramic decorators hand-painted every plate, cup, and vase. They'd sit at benches for 10 to 12 hours painting intricate patterns onto ceramic pieces. Freehand, no stencils, no guidelines, just skill and artistic eye. A single plate might have hundreds of tiny brush strokes, creating delicate flowers and vines. Every piece was different because it was made by a human. Master decorators trained 8 to 12 years. They'd sign their best pieces because they were proud. Museums are full of 1800s ceramics that look like paintings. Modern collectors pay thousands for a single plate. Meanwhile, today's dishes are stamped by machines and chip after a year. Engravers created intricate designs on currency, jewelry, and watches. Training lasted 10 to 15 years. They'd use tiny chisels to carve designs into metal, often working under magnification because the details were so fine. Currency engravers had to create designs so complex counterfeiters couldn't replicate them. They'd work for weeks on a single plate. Jewelry engravers personalized rings and lockets with family initials and decorative flourishes. Today, machines laser-etch designs in seconds. It's faster and cheaper, but there's zero soul. We traded artistry for Amazon Prime. So why did these incredible jobs disappear? The reason is way more complicated than just quote 3. The real culprit was the Industrial Revolution's obsession with speed. During the Civil War, factories needed massive quantities of goods fast. Military contracts demanded thousands of uniforms and weapons on impossible deadlines. A hand compositor could set 1,500 characters per hour. A linotype machine could do 6,000. Factory owners did the math and realized skilled workers were expensive bottlenecks, but it wasn't just efficiency. There was a darker motivation. Skilled craftsmen had leverage. They could demand higher wages and better conditions because their expertise was irreplaceable. Factory owners hated this, so they actively invested in machines that could de-skill labor. Break complex jobs into simple tasks anyone could learn in a week. Replace one master craftsman earning good money with 10 unskilled workers earning pennies. This was intentional union-busting strategy. Owners knew that if workers didn't have specialized skills, They couldn't negotiate. They became disposable. Then there was a massive cultural shift. Quote 4 became synonymous with quote 5 and quote 6. Speed became a virtue. Volume became success. Quality craftsmanship that took time was seen as a luxury for the rich, not something ordinary people deserved. And here's something most people don't know. Child labor laws, which were necessary and good, actually eliminated apprenticeship pathways. The system relied on taking kids at 10 to 12 and training them for a decade. When laws prohibited child labor, the pipeline collapsed. So the knowledge just died. Master craftsmen retired or died, and there was nobody to pass skills to. Entire techniques were lost because they existed only in muscle memory. By 1920, most of these trades had vanished completely. They didn't just automate the jobs. They systematically destroyed the knowledge transfer. Factory owners lobbied against guild systems and pushed for standardized education that trained workers for factory compliance, not creative craftsmanship. The goal was to create a workforce just competent enough to operate machines, but not skilled enough to demand anything better. We didn't just lose jobs. We lost an entire philosophy about work, quality, and human dignity. But here's the crazy part. Some of these jobs, they're actually starting to come back. In the last 10 years, something weird happened. Hand bookbinding courses started having wait lists. Coopering apprenticeships in the bourbon industry became competitive. Textile mending tutorials on YouTube started getting millions of views. The craft revival is real. First, there's the sustainability movement. People are waking up to the fact that buying cheap stuff that breaks in 6 months is destroying the planet. Fast fashion generates 92 million tons of textile waste every year, so consumers are pushing back. They want products that last. They want to repair instead of replace. The buy it for life trend is exploding. Reddit's r/buy it for life has over 2 million members. People are willing to pay 10 times more for a handmade leather bag that'll last 20 years. The economics are shifting because consumers are doing the math and realizing quality is cheaper long term. Then there's the generational shift. Gen Z rejects the mass-produced sameness their parents accepted. They value unique, handmade items. Etsy did over $2.7 billion in sales last year. That's not a niche, that's a movement. Social media is playing a huge role. Videos of bookbinders creating leather journals get 5 to 10 million views. People watch ceramic artists hand-paint pottery for hours. There's something deeply satisfying about watching a human create something beautiful with skill and patience. People are craving it. The bourbon industry has brought coopering back from the dead. Distilleries realized handmade barrels produce better flavor profiles, so they started hiring coopers again. The Kelvin Cooperage in Kentucky employs over 600 people producing millions of barrels using traditional techniques. And people will pay premium prices. A hand-bound journal costs $200 to $500 on Etsy, but it sells out because people want something special. Artisan pricing isn't just viable, it's thriving. There's also a mental health component. Learning a manual skill gives people accomplishment and control in a world that feels automated and uncertain. The maker movement isn't just about products. It's about identity and purpose. People want to create something valuable with their own hands. Turns out people are tired of buying garbage everyone else has. They're willing to invest in craftsmanship again. So, which of these 15 jobs could realistically come back at scale? Let's be honest about what's actually possible. Let's get real. Not all 15 should come back, and not all can. Jobs actively reviving? Hand bookbinding is legit. Dozens of studios teach traditional techniques and take custom commissions. The market exists for heirloom journals and restored books. Coopering is thriving in bourbon and wine industries. Distilleries need barrels, and handmade ones produce better products. That's economics, not nostalgia. Textile mending is exploding thanks to sustainability. Visible mending is a huge trend. Menders charge $50 to $200 per repair and have wait lists. Jobs that could return in specialty markets? Glass blowing exists in art glass and custom scientific equipment. Ceramic decorators could thrive in premium pottery, where people pay hundreds for handmade pieces. Engraving still has demand in luxury goods and custom metalwork. These won't employ millions, but they could provide good livings for thousands of artisans. Partial revivals? Hand compositors won't return for mass printing. But letterpress is having a renaissance in wedding invitations and boutique publishing. Small shops combine traditional technique with modern business. Jobs that should stay dead. Rat catchers, leech collectors, pure finders. Thank God for modern pest control, evidence-based medicine, and synthetic tanning chemicals. Those jobs were gross and dangerous. Let them rest. So let's tally up. 15 forgotten factory jobs covered, 5 actively reviving, 3 could expand in specialty markets, 2 exist in modified forms, 5 better left in history books. Here's what we learned. Speed killed craft, but craft is fighting back. We traded quality for convenience and realized that was a bad deal. The factories that de-skilled labor created throwaway culture that's destroying the planet. But the pendulum is swinging. The takeaway? Support artisans when you can. Buy less, but buy quality that'll last. Learn a manual skill. There's something deeply human about creating with your hands that no AI can replace. Teach your kids that mastering a craft isn't wasted time. It's an investment in dignity and creating something that matters. Maybe the future isn't just AI doing everything. Maybe it's rediscovering that humans are incredible when we're craftsmen instead of cogs. Maybe it's valuing time, skill, and soul over the cheapest option. Or maybe we'll keep buying cheap garbage that breaks and filling landfills. But hey, at least nobody's collecting dog poop for a living anymore.